Hi, and welcome to our pre-matriculation presentation. We are here from the AB540 Undocumented Student Center to assist you with accepting your offer of admissions to UC Davis and to access the financial resources at your disposal. Let's get started with introductions.
Thank you all. We're really excited to be here with you. I'm Ignacio or Nacho Alarcón. Pronouns for me are they, them, and ella. If you haven't heard of pronouns before, think of it as a way to introduce yourself or to be referred to in lieu of your name or separate from your name. So if you've never done this before, feel free to share with folks the pronouns that work for you when you do introductions. I have the great privilege and pleasure of serving as the assistant director at the AB540 and Undocumented Student Center, the first physical center of its kind across the country to support students to thrive within and beyond college. My email is at the bottom, ialarcon@ucdavis.edu. So feel free to email me if you have any questions after this presentation. I'll now pass it to Andres.
Hi, my name is Andres Almanza Zarate. I'm the Community College and Transfer Outreach Intern for the AB540 Undocumented Student Center. I'm a cell biology major and I'm a fourth year. Okay, so now to get started, here's just a little breakdown of the agenda. We'll be going over terminology and important legislation that we think is relevant to know, and things about matriculation. So important legislation. We'll be going over Assembly Bill AB 540, the California DREAM Act, Assembly Bill 60, and Senate Bill 1012. So to start off with, in 2001, Governor Gary Davis signed into law Assembly Bill 540, which created a new exemption from the payment of non-resident tuition to certain non-resident students who have attended high school in California or received a high school diploma or its equivalent. Here we have listed just a few of the requirements, such as I stated earlier, attending a California high school or community college for 3 or more years and graduated from a California high school, enrolled at or registered to enroll at a University of California after January 1st, 2002, must be a non-immigrant as defined by federal immigration law, and must complete an affidavit stating that you will adjust lawful status when the opportunity so presents itself. And from here, I'll pass it back to Nacho.
Thank you, Andres. We're really fortunate that AB 540 has been expanded to include elementary and middle school years as well. And if you ever have questions about your right to access in-state tuition, feel free to email me at the email that I listed here, ialarcon@ucdavis.edu. So I'm going to talk a little bit about AB 60 or Assembly Bill 60. This is legislation passed in California in 2015, and it specifically allows qualifying undocumented individuals to receive a California driver's license that's lawful for driving access within the state. A couple of important notes is that it's considered a state-issued identification, so it's lawful to use in places where state IDs are required. It's accessible to many different folks across the immigration status spectrum, so you do not have to have DACA. If you do have DACA, you can still apply for an AB 60 license, but you also qualify for a real ID at this time as well. A real identification is, just to boil it down really simply, an identification that can be used through federally authorized checkpoints or in federal spaces that include courthouses, military bases, use for interstate travel. So if, for example, you were going to go on an airplane flight between different airports in the United States. So the AB 60 is not considered a real ID and therefore does not count as a form of federal identification. And that's why it's not accepted in some of those other places. It does provide you a full scope of access to driving within California. And if you have any questions about accessing this resource or how it might be of benefit to you, you can consult an immigration attorney before flying. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Senate Bill 1210 or SB 1210. This is legislation that was passed in conjunction with, after AB 540 and in conjunction with ABs 130 and 131 to be able to create dream loan access or loans that have no more favorable a rate of interest than the federally authorized loans, subsidized loans, and to help to meet the gap in educational costs faced by undocumented students who file for the California DREAM Act application. So this is several $1,000s that are offered to qualifying students in their financial aid packages that you can choose to accept or not accept. And it provides an additional resource for support to make sure that your educational journeys can be adequately funded. There's since been expansion with Senate Bill 354 to ensure that not only undergraduate students have access to SB 1210, but also graduate and professional program students. So our undocumented student communities are exponentially growing in their population within graduate and professional program spaces. So think law school, medical school, PhD programs, master's programs. And because of that, there's new legislation passed to create access to these loan funds for these student populations as well. Matriculation. So let me pass this to Andres. Is that right? Or am I going to keep going on this one? You're muted.
Yeah, you keep going on this one, Nacho.
Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to double check. So let me break down the word matriculation. You might have heard this before in the past. You might not have. You might think of like a matricula, like a consular ID. Matriculation just refers to the process of entering a college. So our intention is to talk a little bit about what those steps might look like for undocumented students in particular. So to demystify these processes and provide you with more information, but also to answer some of the questions you might have along the way prior to starting your educational journey at UC Davis. So again, this presentation is not going to focus on how you can make friends or get involved on campus, but really we're trying to assist you with the steps between being offered admission to UC Davis and starting your enrollment. So because there are several steps that we're going to break down here, we'd really encourage you to get started ASAP. And so if you're looking for support for how to complete these processes, again, you can email me and we'll provide you our best assistance possible. So let's start with the statement of intent to register, or the SIR. So this signed intent to register is an opportunity for folks who've been offered admission to UC Davis. So think a letter that says, congratulations, you've been invited to enroll in our school. This is a form that would allow you to say, I am accepting your offer of admission and I intend to sign this intent to register and be present as a UC Davis student. And the reason that schools ask for this is because you might receive a statement of intent to register, an offer of admission to multiple institutions. So if you applied to 5 schools and 4 of them got back to you to say that you're accepted, you need to write a binding document that says, I will be attending this school in particular and not another. And the deadlines look different for first years as first-time college students versus transfer students who are entering UC Davis from another community college or 4-year institution. So the deadline for first years is May 1st, and the deadline for transfer students is June 1st to confirm your enrollment at UC Davis for the following fall. So let's talk about the statement of legal residence as well. This oftentimes is submitted alongside the signed intent to register. And this is a document that allows our residence deputy within the office of the registrar, a team that reviews folks' eligibility for in-state or out-of-state tuition, to be able to make that determination. So they ask you information about your immigration status in part, in addition to whether or not you meet the educational requirements for enrolling at UC Davis. And as a result, they're going to ask you for information that could sometimes feel either triggering or traumatic or very private and sensitive. And so just know that there are multiple layers of protection in place for students to share their immigration histories or status within this statement of legal residence to maintain confidentiality and privacy of that information. Some of those include the Family Education Right to Privacy Act, or FERPA, which was passed in the 1970s as a federal legislation that says that certain elements of the student record, which includes biographical information like your birth date, immigration status, and much more, that information cannot be shared with any people who ask. So without your consent or permission. So whenever you share this information on a statement of legal residence, it's not allowed to leave their specific office unless there's a qualifying reason that you yourself also consent to. There's also AB 21 or Assembly Bill 21, which was passed this past decade in California, which allows you the opportunity to have your immigration status be maintained privately within higher education spaces. And the specific legislation, the legislation specifics are that no student or employee of a college in California can talk about or discuss another person's immigration status with another collegiate entity like a student or employee. So because of AB 21, because the city of Davis is a sanctuary city which does not collaborate with immigrations and customs enforcement beyond the minimal amount required, and because of FERPA, there are some really strong protections in place so that if you share your information around immigration status in the SLR, it's going to be maintained confidentially and privately. So usually what happens for our undocumented students and for other California DREAM Act application students, such as U visa holders, temporary protected status holders, DACA recipients, what ends up happening is that you're given a designation that either says you are a resident or a non-resident. And in the case of those student populations I mentioned, you're likely to receive what's called a non-resident classification. What that means is that your residency for tuition purposes, not for immigration purposes, is such that you would owe the out-of-state tuition rate. So what ends up happening from here is that you have the opportunity to fill out an AB 540 affidavit. So once you receive a non-resident classification, you then have the opportunity to be a qualifying non-resident who can gain or procure in-state tuition by providing the appropriate documentation that proves that you have the 3 full-time years of education required, in addition to the high school diploma or GED or associate's degree or high school proficiency exam requirement met as well, all within California so that you can get in-state tuition. So the way that you get this form is you have to submit the SIR and the SLR prior to filling out this opportunity. And that's because our residence deputy team does not want to process affidavits for all the students who are prospective to UC Davis. They want to process efficiently. And because of that, they only send you this AB 540 affidavit if you have completed the SIR and once you've completed the SLR and they provide you a non-resident classification. So what you do is after completing those 2 documents, the SIR and the SLR, the residence deputy emails you back and says, you have been considered a non-resident. At that point, you then they also include within it the affidavit that you can complete to make sure that you are offered in-state tuition and access to financial aid. So all you have to do is complete that form, and you need to gather appropriate documents to prove that you meet the qualifications. So think official transcripts from your school that verify your enrollment for at least 3 years in California school districts or colleges, in addition to proof that you have a high school diploma or GED or high school proficiency exam or associate's degree earned in California as well. So because you need all of those documents to provide that proof, and because the residence deputy is a small but mighty office, know that you may experience some delays. It's very common for our students to have to wait multiple weeks or months to receive the notification that their AB 540 affidavit has been accepted and therefore in-state tuition offered with out-of-state tuition waived. All of the information that you send and also all the communication specific to this affidavit can be with the residence deputy at the email that we've listed on this slide, which is residencedeputy@ucdavis.edu. So if you ever have questions, you can look for more information at the website link that's at the very bottom of this slide, but you can also communicate directly with the residence deputy by emailing them there. As an office, we do have AB 540 in our name as the AB 540 and Undocumented Student Center. However, all residency information must be, because it's considered very private and confidential, it has to be specifically housed within the residence deputy. So we don't necessarily offer assistance with completing the affidavit, just with other supplementary questions you might have. The residence deputies include Eric Catalan and Barbara McLaughlin. And so if you have questions, know that Barbara and Eric are always happy to answer them through that email. So having shared all that information, I'm now going to pass it to Andres to talk a little bit about what financial aid might look like for you.
Thank you, Nacho. And so why is this important? So right here on screen, we have I guess the most common financial aid package, or more like an average financial aid package. As you can see, term for term, it's actually pretty expensive. And it could go as high as $32,000 a year, and this is in-state tuition. Out-of-state tuition for people who don't qualify for AB540 or international students is much higher. And so it's pretty important to at least get a cheaper experience. And so the way that this is really accessed is at least for students with AB540 for students with AB540 is through the California Dream Act. Can you go to the next slide, Nacho? So the California Dream Act. The California Dream Act application provides financial access to higher education for undocumented undergraduate students. Without it, most would not be able to afford college. It allows for qualifying individuals to receive state-funded financial aid, such as the Cal Grant, and be considered for institutional grants and loans. The goal of the California Dream Act is to really close the financial gap that undocumented students face. However, as a caveat, they must have AB 540 status to receive Cal Grant and to be considered for institutional scholarships. The deadline for the California Dream Act is very much the same as FAFSA, where you have to have it filed by March 2nd. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. Here is just a couple of our links, and feel free to connect with us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Again, if you have questions, you can email me at Alarcon, which is IALARCON @ucdavis.edu, and we'd be happy to answer any more of your questions. We're really excited if you've been offered admission to our prestigious institution, and should you choose to enroll with us, we're also happy to be committed to supporting your educational journey within and beyond college. Thank you for your time today. We hope you have a nice day.